In the blink of an eye, Fantine goes from a lady of the night to the angel of the infirmary. Why? Grace. Pure and simple. Jean Valjean intervenes and melts her heart. His offer to help gives her hope. Her anger dissipates. To understand her darkness, you need to only read Hugo's description of her retaliation on the man who stuffed snow down her back. The girl roared in rage, turned, bound like a panther, and rushed at the man, burying her nails in his face. At that moment, all of her betrayals welled up in an act of defiance. Tholomyès abandoning her, her co-workers turning on her, the foreman firing her, men using her, and God, at least in her eyes, condemning her. She prays in her dream that God might be forgiving. And yet in the infirmary, where she finds care, after she is saved by Valjean, Fantine stretches her arms to heaven, and the expression on her face becomes indescribable. And she whispers a prayer. Grace, pure and simple. Yet there is nothing simple about grace. Anne Lamott writes, I do not understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are and does not leave us where it found us. I have noticed that the world can do almost everything as well as or better than faith communities. You need not be a Christian to build houses or feed the hungry or heal people. But there is only one thing that the world cannot do. It cannot offer grace. But powered by God, we can, if we choose to. The biggest divide in the church today is that two people can be sitting side by side in the same church, essentially believing the same things about God, listening to the same sermon, and singing the same songs, and yet, after the service is over, go into the world with totally different perspectives. One will forgive detractors, feed the poor, and look with promise at people. The other will hold grudges, look at the street beggar with disgust, not compassion, and judge others with conceit. I have been driven to the conclusion that the two major causes of spiritual turmoil are these: the failure to receive and live out God's unconditional grace and forgiveness, and the failure to give out that unconditional love and forgiveness and grace to others. Spiritual turmoil. You know, we believe a good theology of grace. I taught grace to the confirmands yesterday at the Ponderosa camp. We talk it well, but that's not what we live. The good news of grace has not penetrated our resistance. And yet here is Fantine changed. By what? Oh, a warm bed? Sure. Safety? Sure. Nuns waiting on her? Sure. The opportunity to see her daughter again? Sure. All of these things yet. But combined, they are not able to soften her heart like Jean Valjean offering her mercy when the law says she does not deserve it. Law says punishment. 6 months in prison where people go to rot. The law is salt in already painful wounds. Grace says forgiveness, an infirmary where people go to heal. Grace is the salve in a wounded soul. The world thirsts for grace in ways it doesn't even recognize. Grace Notes sang, "My soul is thirsting, O God. My soul thirsts like the earth, parched, lifeless, without water." And so it is with Fantine. Even in her dying, she thirsts no more. Grace. It is amazing. Every English usage that I can find always retains some of the depth of the original. The word reminds us that good things come not by our own efforts, but by the blessings of God. Many people say grace before meals, acknowledging daily bread as one of God's gifts. We are grateful for someone's kindness, gratified by good news, congratulated when successful, gracious in hosting friends. When a person serves us well, we leave a gratuity. The composer of music will add grace notes. They're not essential to the melody, they are gratuitous. And they add a flourish whose presence would be missed. Some publishers offer the policy of gracing, sending an extra magazine gratis when the subscription expires. And companies sometimes like to extend a grace period. Maybe grace simply reflects the deepest relationship and the deepest understanding of our relationship with God. That God loves us just as we are, and that loving, when received, heals us. Oh, I keep doing this. I did this at 8 o'clock. I leave my props down here. I tell you. All right, who wants this $20 bill? All right, okay, I thought so. But it's actually going to family camp for scholarships and for some s'mores, because I know there is nothing more graceful than a s'more in my life. So I'm going to give this away. So we had a lot of people who want it. Who wants it now? Okay. All right. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Anybody want it now? Okay. Point made. No matter what I do with this money, you still want it because it does not decrease in value. No matter how smudged or rumpled or stepped on it is, it's still $20. Many times in our lives we get knocked down, dropped, crumpled, smudged, and the dirt gets ground into us by the decisions we make or the circumstances that come our way. And sometimes we feel as though we are worthless, used up, and of no account. But no matter what has happened or what will happen, we will never lose our value in God's eyes. Dirty or clean, crumpled or finely creased, we are priceless. After I made the assignment of the essay, "This is who I am and this is what I do," 2 weeks ago, Kristen Foster stopped me after that service outside in the foyer, and she said, "I think I can write my essay. I don't think that's going to be too hard for me. I've been working on that kind of thing for some time, but I just have one question." "What's that?" I said. "Is it enough?" she asked. Is it enough? It's the question of grace. How would my life change if I truly believed that God loved me just as I am? If I looked in the mirror and saw what God sees? So I hugged her, and I told her about my grace transformation. It was a rather embarrassing moment. A friend was listening to me, some years ago. I was whining. I was whining about all the work that I had failed to complete. It was a real pity party. I was behind. I was beside myself with anxiety and worry in a paralyzing perfectionism. Nothing measured up. Well, my friend pulled a chair up, set it right down in the middle of my living room, and said, "Sit down. You are not getting up until you get this." I sat down. And he walked round and round and round my chair and said, "Janet, you are perfect just the way you are. You don't have to do anything to earn God's affection. You are enough. Do you hear me? You are enough. All the good stuff, all the less than good stuff, even all those warts, you are enough." And then he spun around and knelt down in front of me and looked me in the eyes and said, "Got it?" "Got it." "Good." He laughed. You see, grace is a force that just infuses our lives and keeps letting us off the hook. It's unearned love, the love that just goes before us and greets us along the way. It's the help we receive when all of our bright ideas have left us, when we are empty and desperate and have discovered that our best thinking and our most charming charm have failed. Grace is that light or electricity or juice or breeze that takes us from that isolated spot and puts us with others who are startled and embarrassed and eventually grateful to be there with us. This is the healing that changes us, knitting together all those fragile, fractured pieces of our bodies and souls. It is the most basic, ongoing, creative work of God in the cosmos. Hear that again. It is God's most basic, ongoing, creative work in the cosmos. Grace. And Jesus knows this. He spends time in the wilderness, kind of getting it together, about clarity, about his own story, about his mission, and about his essay. Jesus wrote that essay, 25 words or less. This is who I am. This is what I do. And with that clarity, Rabbi Jesus comes out of the wilderness and he invites others to join him. Come, follow me. Simon Peter says, "Come to my hometown. Come to Capernaum. We'll set up our headquarters there." And so he heals Simon Peter's mother-in-law. And other relatives come and acquaintances for him to lay hands on them. And they want him to stay and to become their prophet and their rabbi. And he recites his composition. He says, "I can't. I must preach the good news of God's kingdom in all the cities, for this is why I was sent." Don't you hear that essay? This is why I was sent. Audrey Elling says that Jesus' essay went something like this: "I am the way, the truth, and the light. Through preaching, teaching, and healing, I seek and save the lost." Grace. Max Lucado tells a story about a mother in Brazil, Maria, and her young, beautiful teenage daughter, Christina. Christina wants to leave the village and go to the bright lights of Rio. And so one dawn before the sun breaks, she sneaks out of the house and takes the bus to Rio de Janeiro. Maria, knowing what will happen to a young woman in a city like that who will run out of money early, jumps on a bus to go in search. But before she does that, she stops in one of those photo machines and makes as many photos as she possibly can. She writes a little note on the back of them. So when she gets to the inner city, she starts roaming around, and at every bar and at every hotel, she leaves a photo of herself on the bathroom mirror or on the bulletin board in the lobby. Eventually, the money runs out, the photos run out, and she has to return home, brokenhearted. Well, days later, Christina is coming down the steps in some nameless hotel, and she thinks she sees it over there on the board. Could it be? Could it be? Yes, it is. It's her mother. And so she takes the photo down, and as she cherishes it, she turns it over, and she finds that there is a note on the back. It says, whatever you have done, whatever you have become, it doesn't matter. Please come home. And she did. It is the basic message of the Christian story. God searches for us. And no matter how distant we step back from God, God always says, whatever you have done, whatever you have become, it doesn't matter. You are enough. Please come home. Grace. Javert. If you look strictly at Javert's resume, you could almost like this police inspector. I mean, born of a gypsy in prison, he pulls himself up by his own bootstraps to become a highly respected officer. Right is right, wrong is wrong, integrity matters, conscience matters, honor matters. But above all, the law matters. But the weakness of this man, like the law itself, is his neglect of heart, of grace, of the human context that always colors every situation. He looks at Jean Valjean and sees nothing more than a prisoner, number 24601. In Javert's world, there are only good guys and bad guys, those who uphold the law and those who attack it. He never understands that the mass of humanity lives somewhere in between. So as you listen to stars, see if you can locate God's graceful response.